Hey everybody, Christopher K. Smith. This is my FibLines quarterly update for March 23rd, 2019. So this video should last about 10 minutes. I'll give you a quick intro to FibLines, update the markets, update my symbols, and tell you where you can get the FibLines indicator. So very simply, FibLines is a tool you can add to any chart or any market that essentially allows you to identify hidden areas of support and resistance. So to construct the FibLines, basically you take the Thinkorswim Fibonacci retracements tool, looks like the little percent sign here, and you go to a chart and you basically draw a line from the top to the bottom of what you think would be Elliott wave 1. And when you do that, the Fib retracements tool puts lines at 161, 261, and 423% of that initial move that you identify. So when you do that, you'll notice very oftentimes if you picked a good top and bottom of Elliott wave 1, you'll see support and resistance right there at 161, 261, and 423% of that initial move that you selected. Not only that, if you take the areas, these other subregions, say between 161 and 261, you break those down, you'll often find support and resistance at the 31 and 31.2 and 61.8, which are Fibonacci values of those subregions there. So that's all great and it's wonderful, but it's a pain to draw all those lines on all the charts, and it's pretty quickly becomes confusing. So what the FibLines indicator does is does all that for you. And to show you what it looks like, I'm going to add FibLines and range band study set, and you'll see this. Once you do that, there's the chart with the FibLines indicator, and you'll notice the Elliott wave 1 again is marked by these red lines here, and then the 161, the 261, the 423, and all the subregions are identified. So what does this tell us here about canopy growth? Well, we pretty much shot right up here past the 161 line, came right to the 261 line, bounced some resistance, came all the way back to the 100, bounced around for a while, eventually shot through, went all the way up to the 423% line, and then came all the way back to the 261. So this is just one example. It's not a trading system, but it's an area of identifying likely areas of support, a tool that allows you to identify likely areas of support and resistance. And unlike most technical indicators, it has to be calculated for each chart. So it only works for a limited number of charts, and the levels are embedded in the indicator. So one of my favorite to look at, for example, is Facebook. I've been with that one for a long time. And you could see very interestingly here you had your Elliott wave 1. You had to move up past the 161, up to the 261 where it bounced around for a while, and had that move back in the summer, went all the way up to that yellow line there, and then sold off really hard after earnings. Boom, came right down to the red line, rallied back down, or excuse me, sold off back down. It's kind of been in rally mode recently. And if you look very recently at Facebook here at a shorter time frame, let's say, I don't know, 15 minutes, for example, you can see, let's pick another time frame, maybe hourly, how it's just been very interesting the way price has kind of up to that gray line, back down, resisted the gray line, boom, resisted at the gray line. So the interesting thing about FibLines is it works at many different time scales, at both the hourly, the daily, the weekly, and all the lines are all the same at every time frame, which is can't say for typical indicators like moving averages where you get different interpretation at different time scales. So that's the quick introduction to the FibLines indicator. If you want to find a full story on it, go up to YouTube and search for Intro to FibLines. You'll find my video I did back in 2016 that describes the indicator in some detail, how it works, why it works, and whatnot. So let's see where we are on the markets generally. We'll start with the DIA, the Dow. Let's go back to a daily here. We had that huge sell-off back in the end of 2018, took us all the way down here to this orange line. We rallied pretty much all the way back up here. Now we're kind of running into some resistance. I personally think we're going to make it back to the old highs, just a question of time. Boeing's been pretty interesting lately. BA had that plane crash in Ethiopia has been pretty bad. So that's kind of been under some pressure lately. I don't have a position in it, but it's interesting to watch. And it's interesting to also notice that these FibLines values here, levels I should say, that we've seen recently are based on an Elliott wave 1 that started all the way back here, I believe it was in 2016 to to 2017. And those calculations that are based on those time values still have relevance today. And that's the amazing thing about FibLines, is that things that happened a long time ago still affect what's happening today. So don't have a position in Boeing. QQQ also had a huge rally up here, and it seems like we're going to be drawn back to the top. Amazon, I've been in and out of that one. In recently, probably close to the top. I have a funny feeling Amazon is going to get back to this old high. It's just a question of how long it takes. We've had quite a rally here just recently. It kind of broke out of this consolidation zone here. My take was once we broke this orange line, we're just going to run all the way back up here to the top. So I kind of got sucked in here at the top. I'm long a very, very small amount of shares here that got sold off in Friday's rout, but I'm sticking with it to the long side for the time being. So some other interesting examples of FibLines action. We looked at Dow, we looked at Facebook, ROKU. It was a really good trade I had this quarter. Pecked that up down here in the low 40s, right all the way up here till about 70, where I was able to get out of that. I haven't been back in it since. I'm going to try to stay out of that, hold on to those profits. But another interesting example of FibLines action here. You can see my Elliott Wave 1 started here at about the 29 level here in when was that? In April of 2018, and I had it ending here in June of 2018. That's your 100%. Your 161 here had a brief pause. Your 261 had an almost perfect deflection right off of that. Sold all the way back down to the 100, the bottom of the 100% channel here. That's where I picked it up here early in, I believe it was April or so. Excuse me, in February, and got all the way back here to the 70s where I sold that off of that. But very interesting. You can see the way it's obeying the lines here. This one's also, I think, going to get back up to the old high, but notice there really is no earnings history here, so I'm a little bit reluctant to stay long on that one over time. What else? We've added some new symbols here due to the NASDAQ 100. Micron has been actually in and out of the NASDAQ 100 twice over its history. United Airlines, UAL, added recently. Not a big fan of the airlines. VRSN, VRSN, long-standing company, been around a long time, all the way back from the .com days. Recently added to the NASDAQ 100, I should say, back in December. Here's your Elliott Wave 1, your top and bottom. Very nice deflection off the 161. Very nice deflection off the 261, and then the 423. And I added an enhancement to the FibLines back in September of 2018, where I added two more levels on top of the 461. I think it's the 686 and the 1108. I think is what it is. So I've gone beyond the 461 level in terms of FibLines. The other one was Willis Towers Watson, WLTW. Don't really know much about that one. Okay, in terms of other updates, a bunch of deleted symbols, mostly due to mergers and acquisitions. Fox and FOXA have sold their, I think it's the movie studios, to Disney, and they renamed some new symbols, TFCF and TFCA, but they have no history, so I dropped those. VIP Shops was kind of a dog, so I dropped that, and the dollar index doesn't appear anymore in Thinkorswim. And Express Scripts and Aetna both were lost that due to mergers. And speaking of Aetna, Aetna was bought by CVS Health, which is the nation's biggest drugstore chain, pharmacy chain. And recently picked up a position in CVS Health for a couple of reasons. One is you notice the stock took a real beating here, sold off hard after coming off an all-time high all the way back here in April of 2015. And more recent high here in 2016. Sold off really hard due to their acquisition of Aetna. So Aetna is a big health insurer. CVS obviously is a pharmacy, health retailer. So mostly the stock sold off here on this acquisition of Aetna, and they paid $80 billion for it. So it's a pretty big risk. But they're going to bring a lot of business, a lot of pharmacy business into CVS because of that merger, and also their pharmacy benefit manager Caremark they bought a few years back. So Aetna is my insurer. It works. So as a result of being an Aetna customer, Now my prescriptions go to CVS Caremark automatically, whereas they used to go to Express Scripts. So I think they're going to have a lot of business driven their way. It's going to be not going to be easy for them, but I picked up some shares in CVS Health. I'm going to stick with them for the long term. So there was some insider buying, and also take a look at where the shares are back here in the 56 level. They go all the way back here. You'll notice my Elliott Wave 1 I had starting here back in 2013 when the stock was making about $1.09 a share of earnings. So here we are back in 2019. The stock's been knocked all the way back to 2013 levels, and now they're making $2 a share in earnings. So I think it's an opportunity. It's not going to rage to the upside. If we get a move back up to 71, I'll be happy with that. So I'm long some CVS. Canopy Growth, CGC, is one of my new symbols added in this quarterly update. This is a cannabis company. Canadian cannabis companies, as all of them are, because it's not legal in the U.S. So I think I may have talked about this one earlier, but I don't own the shares. I sold some cash secured puts here at the 45 level that have been doing well so far, though we did breach the short strike just recently. So sticking along with that one. Not making money yet, but they do have a ton of cash in the bank due to their IPO, and some positive prospects there. VMware was also added. This one had a huge run. Unfortunately, was not in it. And ROKU, I think I already talked about. So those are the new symbols added in this quarterly update. So overall, it's been a pretty good period. I'm up pretty nicely for the year. I made back the money I lost last year in the 6 or 7% department. I'm up about 8% for the year here, but mostly due to the big moves in the market. The Tastyworks trading hasn't been going all that well due to the fact that it's mostly selling options, and you're looking for basically nothing to happen for the stock to stay within the expected move, and they haven't recently. They've been outrunning their expected move, so I'm up a little bit, but giving back most of the profits I had for the year in Tastyworks account. So that's pretty much it. I found in periods when the option trading isn't going well, I basically just stop doing it and wait for the market to calm down, and it'll eventually keep working again. But longer term, I do expect the market to come to the Qs, the Dow, everything to make new all-time highs. Just a question of how long it's going to take and what kind of sellback we're going to get in the meantime. I'm long Amazon and long a very small amount of Netflix, and I do expect those stocks to all make new all-time highs. Just a question of when. FLX. All right, so that's pretty much it. If you want to get the FibLines indicator, you can find it up here in the FibTools sell store at fibtools.sells.com, where you can find all my stuff, basically the range bands, trend dashboard for Thinkorswim, which is, I don't think I have it set up here, Market Watch, no I don't, which is basically a trend dashboard where you can set up the range bands indicator and look at it in multiple time frames, including squeezes. And then you also get the full version of the FibLines indicator that costs $99, and that gives you the FibLines for about 220 symbols. Included with that is a text file that has a list of those symbols. Once you get those set up, you can set them up in Thinkorswim and get the FibLines on those 220 symbols. That includes the Dow 30, NASDAQ 100, your major futures, your NQ, your TM, your ES, and then your major indexes. It's got your select sector spiders, your XLU, your XLP, and all those, along with some currencies and other symbols that I'm watching. So you can get that up on the FibTools sell store for $99, and that includes 4 quarterly updates. That's $99 per year, so it's a subscription type of service. I do it that way because, unlike most indicators, it has to be maintained over time, and I do 1 update per quarter. This is my quarterly update for March of 2019. So thanks very much for watching, and have a great day and good trading.